Taoiseach, I want to tell you a story. I wish it wasn't a true one, but it is. Two sisters, both pregnant, both happily looking forward to the birth of their children. Tragically, towards the end of the first sister's uneventful pregnancy, the baby died in the womb. She was medically assisted in delivering him. The family buried him and mourned him. The second sister wrote to me in the days that followed, having herself received a diagnosis that the fetus she was carrying had a condition, fatal abnormality, incompatible with life. And this is what she said: "I do not want to terminate my baby's life, but he does not have one. A heartbeat does not equate to an independent life for my boy. It only confirms a few short hours of pain for him and a lifetime of it for us. I have watched what my sister went through, the amount of support she was offered, and the support that she will require over the coming months. I am so angry that this support is not available to me. I have watched my parents' anguish that their other daughter has this ahead of her, but without that much needed support, hundreds of miles away from family and friends. The dignity shown to the tiny corpse of my nephew on his first and final journey home will not be extended to my son, as he will have to be locked in the boot of a car on a ferry journey across the Irish Sea, or have his ashes delivered by courier weeks later, along with the Amazon and eBay purchases. Taoiseach, this is your Ireland. These events happened in the weeks after you last voted down our fetal abnormality bill. In anybody's book, it is cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment. 4 times since then, your government has appeared in front of international human rights bodies and been instructed to deal with these matters, and you have done nothing. In the last case taken by Amanda Mellett, UN human rights experts stated that not only did we violate that woman's human rights, but our lack of action aggravated her suffering. And you come into this house and talk about a citizens' assembly reporting to an Oireachtas committee, meaning that it will be at least 2018 before any proposals to remedy this will be before the people, condemning hundreds of other people to the torture that that woman experienced. You hide behind the advice of the Attorney General, advice we haven't seen, advice which is substantially at variance with the advice of other Attorney Generals and disputed by a whole array of legal experts. Taoiseach, my question to you is, who do you think you are that you believe that you can allow the continued violation of human rights?
Thank you very much,
The Constitution can never be used to deal with this. If you haven't got the leadership or the guts to do it yourself, will you stop using your position to block the courts or the people from dealing with this?
Taoiseach.
These are all harrowing tales that Deputy Daly raises today. I get similar communications from women over the country myself. This is our Ireland, Deputy Daly. It's an Ireland that's subject to a constitution which is voted on by the people, and in the 1980s that vote was taken by the people, and that interpretation of what it means is made by the Supreme Court. This impacts on people's lives. I want to try to change that. And in order to do that, you have to build consensus and understanding and information from people who will have to vote, if that be so, to change the Constitution one way or the other. So it's not a case of me as a citizen standing here blocking anything. We've actually put it into the programme for government by which a process can be gone through rationally and in a common sense way, taking into account the changing attitudes and the sensitivities of so many people. You may not appreciate that. I understand your point of view. You've been very forthright about it. You've stated your views here very cogently on many occasions. Unfortunately for you, you cannot change the Constitution unless you have an opportunity to cast your vote along with the citizens of the country. So for that reason, the process that I've set out is one that will return here to the legislators elected by the people to cast their vote in a free way according to their conscience. And if that recommendation is for a referendum to deal with the Eighth Amendment in whatever form, then that be so, and that vote will take place, and that's the only way it can be changed. So, while the Attorney General, I answered this to Deputy Howland yesterday, is the only legal advisor to the government under the Constitution, I accept that. It is, of course, the Supreme Court, at the end of the day, who interpret what the Constitution means. So I've included, as a central part of the programme for government, the Citizens' Assembly, reflection in the first instance on the Eighth Amendment, taking into account many of the stories that you've outlined, reference back to the Oireachtas here. But I would point out to you, Deputy Daly, that while you've been very forthright here, the medical assessments of what is contained in Deputy Wallace's bill will not be touched by any medic in the country. This bill is not good for women. It's bad for women. It's inadequate, and it means that it does not answer the question that the good lady asked in writing her letter to you. I've set out a process by which collectively we can reflect on this, and that eventually the people might be asked to make a decision. And that's the only way that your constitution can be amended or changed. I do share your view, Deputy Daly, that the services surrounding these events and these instances should be improved, and we want to make arrangements that be so. The central issue is that if a child is born for whatever short length of time, 43.3 kicks in, and that's the challenge, and that's what needs to be talked about and understood, and that's why those at the top of the medical profession say that the bill, while Deputy Wallace may have the principle right here, the substance and the way that this is phrased is grossly and wholly inadequate.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Deputy Daly, 1 minute.
You don't stand here as a private citizen, you stand here as a leader of a country that has found to violate the human rights of women. And when we did try and put to this House that there would be a repeal of the Constitution, provide for abortion in this and other circumstances, you and your government stood in its way. You have used your position to block progress on this. The arrogance of the minister beside you and a number of your colleagues over the past period who would presume to anticipate how the courts would deal with this matter is absolutely breathtaking. In fact, your use of the Attorney General as a block is in of itself unconstitutional, in my opinion. The government proposes laws, that all of us passes laws, and the courts interpret laws. Now, why can you not allow the courts of our country to adjudicate on this? We haven't seen the Attorney General's advice, but from the tidbits we get, and you seem to have reiterated it, her advice seems to rest on the mistaken premise that Article 43.3 only deals with cases where there's a risk to the life of the mother. That's not true. PP versus HSE, Roach versus Roach, re-award of court, that wasn't those circumstances. She seems to be saying, Count Corley, the Taoiseach went well over his time as well. I was watching the clock on this.
You've gone over your time.
Well, maybe he could assist us then by publishing the advice that we have seen. You are the one who stopped the people and the courts deciding on this, and your diktat to your backbenchers to obstruct this bill is condemning hundreds of people to this torture continuum, because what you've proposed is actually nothing.
Taoiseach.
Deputy Daly is wrong again. What we did do was to legislate for the interpretation of the Supreme Court in the Protection of Life Bill. After 30 years of failure and neglect by any government to deal with it, we did legislate for that. That's the first point I'd make to you. The second point is that when you say you do nothing about it, we've actually put as a central part in the programme for government a process by which you look and reflect carefully on the Eighth Amendment, what that means. And the Citizens' Assembly will look at that in the first instance, Deputy Daly, and report back to the Oireachtas here. You may not believe in that process, you may not want that process, but this is something that I believe is a way to look at the Eighth Amendment and the ramifications of it for the many people, many women around the country who've had to deal with this trauma and this stress and this pressure. I do agree that the services that should be provided for people can be improved. The central issue of the substance of 43.3 is one that is part of the process that we've put in place here.
Thank you very much. That concludes Leader's question.